Hi, my name is Richard Crawford, host of Supply and Demand, an enlightening webcast show where we delve into the dynamic world of the global supply chain and where we navigate through the complexities, disruptions and innovations that shape this vital network of interconnected businesses. From sourcing raw materials to delivering finished products, we'll uncover the challenges that arise at each stage and explore strategies for optimizing efficiency and sustainability. And each week we'll highlight and discuss a specific supply chain topic. And of course, I'm joined each week by my co-host and CEO of the Atlas Network and author of Supply Chain Ups and Downs, Mr. Kareem Kafuri. Kareem, you've been really busy.
I've been busy?
Yeah,
I think the last picture you sent me, you were like in the middle of Mongolia on a motorcycle.
I was in the Gobi Desert.
Chasing wild horses through like the tundra.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we both been busy, just different kind of busy, I guess.
Yeah, I've been out there in the wild and you've been in there in the media world. I mean, you're popping up everywhere. All your social media, you're making quite the impact.
There's no stopping what's going on in the world of global economy, supply chain, tariffs. I was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange 4 times in the past 6 weeks, including an airing on CNBC,
right,
talking about all of these things that are happening. And oh my goodness, it's like every time you turn on the news, it's just something new. I mean, now we're talking about tariffs on Switzerland and the watch industry being impacted. As you know, I have a watch company called Core Timepieces.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting scenario. You've got, tumultuous scenarios with countries like India, which I thought would have been an amazing, second kind of trading partner behind China, where we're talking about imposing significant tariffs on there. And so, in reaction to this, the Indian government and Prime Minister Modi has said that he is going to do major tax breaks for the Indian citizens so that they end up buying more to support the manufacturing economy, assuming that their export market may be a little bit curbed through tariffs and these activities. So, that ends up being a challenge because if you end up, not being able to export to the rest of the world, then in the end of the day, they stop being an option or cease being an option. And so, there's a lot of shifts that continue to happen. Plus this idea here that we could anywhere from 200 to 250% tariffs on things like pharmaceuticals that we use every single day, and what that will mean for the American consumer. So there's just really no stop to either the industries or the countries that are involved with regards to what's happening in the global economy. Some of these are calculated maneuvers. Some of them are, a bit, random in many ways, but we just try to make sense of it.
That was my toss into the wind gesture.
Yeah, and make sure that our clients basically still can manage and operate. But anyway, enough about the really exciting stuff of global supply chain, which we talk about all the time. I want to know why you were on a motorcycle chasing wild horses.
Dude, it was
on your arm. Can you
it was amazing. So I was in the Gobi Desert. We were at a place called Three Camel Lodge. We're shooting for my other show, Leave No Trace, season 3. And the gentleman who owned the lodge also owns a couple of vintage motorcycles that have the sidecar.
Oh, that's insane.
So I was like, hey, do you mind if I kind of jump on and drive it? I used to have a motorcycle. So he's like, can you drive a motorcycle? I was like, hell yeah. So he threw me the keys. And off I went out into the Gobi Desert, and it's not a desert like sand desert. It's a grass plains desert. There's different kinds of deserts, but within those grass plains are all kinds of wild animals. And in Mongolia, there's a ton of wild horses, like herds of wild horses. And we came across a group of them, and I just started riding beside them, and they took off like a full power, full sprint. And I was keeping up with them. The things I've done, Kareem, it's probably the coolest thing I've ever done. Like,
yeah, you're racing. So you were basically telling me that you were trying to put your horsepower of your motorcycle against actual horsepower.
But they were so powerful and majestic, and I was just riding along beside them. It's wind in my hair, it was just really one of the most surreal, like unplanned things I've ever done. And I've done a lot of really cool stuff, but that ranks high. Anyway, enough about me.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been there with you, but I don't know about the wind in my hair part. don't know about the wind of my hair part, but the wind part I get.
That's pretty funny. Look at you. You're still funny. All right. Anyway.
I was funny.
All right. So let's bring in our next guest and, quit talking about us and get somebody who's probably more interesting than us. So we're going to introduce W.NDeen Nasseredeen, and he's a certified professional forecaster, strategic operations advisor, and founder of W.NDeen Advisory, where he helps $5 to $50 million consumer brands master demand planning, supply chain management, so they can scale with confidence. And his team partners with fast-growing CPG companies trapped by stockouts, excess inventory, and forecasts nobody trusts, turning supply and demand chaos into a competitive advantage. And with 15 plus years of experience leading finance, supply chain, and operations strategy for both global icons and high-growth startups, Walid specializes in simplifying complexity and building demand-driven systems that last. He's also the author of Amazon's best-selling Mind Your Business, a guide for founders to uncover blank spots, eliminate waste, and lead with intention. Welcome to the show, buddy. We got two big Amazon authors on here now.
Yeah. Let me do the fellow shout out as well.
Right there you go.
Well, first of all, Walid, thank you for coming on the show. It's interesting because Richard and I have such different backgrounds, but we've been friends for a really, really long time. And, he doesn't come from the supply chain world. So I always love to see his sort of reactions to the different guests that we bring on and why they connect into the global supply chain. But the most important thing, Richard, about Walid, which I think is so critical and why we wanted to have him on the show, is because Walid's job isn't necessarily around getting things made or even getting things delivered. His main focus more than anything else is making sure that those things are on shelves. Because if they're not on the shelves, then nobody buys them, and then the supply chain doesn't happen again, where then people then have to create. And the challenges that then come from those kinds of scenarios when people have this inventory and they don't know how to get it on the shelf or why it isn't moving and so on and so forth, which is such an essential part of the supply chain, but not as well exposed, and many people don't talk about it. So the fact that he has a business and experience at some pretty large organizations and companies around how to make sure that companies are getting their inventory on shelves and then restocked, and this mechanism, which is so critical because we know inventory can kill businesses if not managed properly, is amazing and I think is wonderful. So I just wanted to break that down for you if you didn't kind of get it, but that's what his main focus is.
Yeah. So my first question is, as a layman in this industry, supply chain, what's stopping people putting it on the shelves? Don't they already have an outlet to sell the product before it's even designed and made? And the answer is probably no, but I'm really curious as to what stops them from getting it on the shelf. What are the challenges?
Well, a lot of times it's the actual supply chain itself. So what happens is you have supply and demand, but people don't realize that demand actually comes first. And so you have to forecast the demand and then work it backwards all the way to, Kadeem's level, where it's like, okay, if we're predicting that we're going to sell this much at the consumer level in, let's say, October, well, if you start taking the lead times of the supply chain backwards, if they need it in October, when do we need to buy it? When do we need to place the order? When do we need to get the raw materials? When do we need to get it into the warehouse? When do we need to get it into the DC so that the customer can get it to their stores? So it's basically managing the entire supply chain backwards, but starting with the endpoint in mind and then reverse engineering the entire supply chain.
That makes sense. I can see somebody who owns a company like, man, business is great, things are flying off the shelves, and then they're like, let's get the next thing on the shelf. They're like, well, you should have ordered that like 4 months ago. So that's probably an example, right?
Yes, I mean, the most extreme example I would use is I used to work with a Mattel toy company, and most people don't realize that the Barbie dolls, the toys, are typically a 1 year life cycle, which means they don't go to the next year. It's a one year lifetime, and you're making all your sales in November and December.
Right.
But you're manufacturing that stuff in China in June.
Right.
So you need to basically come up with a forecast in June on when you're going to get the stuff in the shelf in November to basically make all your sales in Q4. But because it's a public company and because the toy ends at the end of the year, you have to have enough inventory where you don't go out of stock because you can't lose sales because you're a public company. And you can't go into the year with excess inventory because it's end of life SKU. It's not going to be any good the next year.
All right.
So you literally have to, I call it supply and demand management. You have to literally be able to forecast not only having enough product, but on the other side, not having too much product that's just sitting there tying up cash.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and you know, when Walid and I were together in Las Vegas, I had been to Vegas probably 3 times, and every time we're like, let's get together. And they're like, it never happened. We just kept missing each other. I was like, hey, I'm on the way out to the airport now I'm doing an interview. Like, we just kept missing each other. I was like, that's it. I'm like, we're doing it this time. We're doing it at Co-Create, which we both were at, Alibaba Co-Create, which is a really cool event in general. I love to have Walid's perspective on it, but I think it's very neat, interesting event with a lot of people and so on. And I'm like, we're getting together. And I think the way it worked is the first time we saw each other is I was meeting with the team. We had about an hour before we had to go to do our first things of the day. Here was Walid right there in the lobby. I'm like, that's it. We're going to have coffee right now. If we don't do it now, I don't know when it's going to happen. We sat down, we had a nice coffee. We started talking and conversation. And one of the things I said to him is I said, listen, you know, I want to know how you break this down for layman folks and layman's terms. And so my social media manager was there, who really, you know, is great, but, you know, is not really from social media. I mean, not really from the supply chain world. I'm like, can you please explain to her how you do what you do? And he like literally like points to the shelves. You see, there's like cereal on that shelf, and there's like milk on that shelf. And like if these 2 things weren't there, then these people would go hungry because they don't want it. And they get upset because they don't have what they need. And then someone goes to another store because they didn't get what they got when they wanted it. And it was this whole like just real life example. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's powerful. It's really important. You should tell your story about how it is that you do what you do. So, you know, I was really happy to meet with him. We kind of kept, you know, working around each other during the show. Here and there when we would see each other too. It was a very busy show. Damon John was there. Lori Grenier was there from Shark Tank. They did a whole pitch competition out there, which was pretty neat. I took the stage twice and did a bunch of interviews and podcast stuff too. Walid, what'd you think about that show? What'd you think about Las Vegas and Co-Create in general?
It's good. It's definitely, last year was my first year. This year was definitely a lot bigger than last year. So it was good to see it grow. They had a lot more, I think, like the influencer market. A lot last year was a lot of like Alibaba employees speaking. This year it seemed like more diverse. I also want to take a step back and just say thank you for the hospitality. Like you and your team were great. I really appreciate you guys taking the time, letting me watch how you kind of do the content stuff. So I appreciate that. And that's honestly, that was probably the highlight, is getting to meet you and your team and spend time with you and just enjoy the show.
Man, you must lead a boring life, Walid. If Kareem's a highlight, geez, Walid, that must be a boring life.
See, Walid. Now that's when you know that we know each other. Me and Richard for probably like 20 years at least.
Yeah.
When he likes to, I think Ricky knew me when I had hair. I think that's how long ago it was. It was that long ago.
A long time ago.
And I knew you when your hair wasn't all gray and salt and pepper, God knows what. So we both have changed a little bit through time, but good friends stay good friends. So, you know, that's really awesome. Again, you know, I think that, you know, what Walid does in the realm of the supply chain industry is absolutely essential. And the most important time when you really see it is when you have disruptions, right? You got disruption in supply chain. You've got, as he said, demand. You're trying to work it backwards, but you got no supply. So I'm curious, Walid, when you have like major disruptions, like a pandemic, or like even, you know, this tariff environment when people say, let's wait and see and let's not really ship our products. How do they sort of like not lose market share when they don't have the products that people need? How does that gap get closed in that situation?
So it's always going to be different. The truth is a lot of times if you're communicating and you're honest with your partners and you have that relationship, a lot of times that itself will mitigate most of the risk. But when you talk about supply and demand, forecasting is one component of it, but things like inventory strategy and the supply chain strategy is also another part of it. And so there are conditions where when things get messed up, it should be built into the model. Like, you could say that we didn't know about COVID, but we all kind of know, like, every 7 years or every 3 years, the port's going to be on strike. There's going to be a volcano in Europe that stops everybody from shipping. There's always something. We call it the black swan event. There's always something in the model, like every 3 to 5 years, that breaks. And so the forecasting is one thing, but on the inventory strategy, if you understand like what drives your business, you always want to have like a plan B, whether it's all the way down at the vendor side or if it's just an inventory strategy to kind of at least protect yourself. It's almost like a cash reserve. You want to have an inventory strategy for reserve for when something breaks. How do you manage it? And it could be keeping additional inventory, or it could be a process where like you talk to your customer and you swap out another product or whatever it is. A lot of times when you have issues, you dip into your excess, you try and just figure things out. It's always different, right? Toys is different, food's different, but it's always just understanding there's a plan B. And it's not about not taking the hit, it's about not getting knocked out. You're always gonna have that hit that you take, but it's how you mitigate that risk from being something that's like damaging to the actual business on a financial level. And you just work your way through it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, Ricky, I mean, what are your thoughts about what we're talking about here as we're kind of discussing these points?
What I'm thinking now is, based on what he's told me, I mean, these places are open up for Halloween and stuff, and they're open for like a month, and then they're closed down, and they'll rent a storefront for a month and close down. Forget about the supply chains, but wow, how that must be tricky, right? Because you got, hey, we're going to sell a bunch of Halloween stuff, let's get it all in, and then the day after Halloween, if you didn't sell it, they don't keep it till next year because they pretty much throw it all out, I think, or they take it out of they're not even in the store anymore. So that's highlighted it for me a little bit. Things I never thought about before, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big thing.
Yeah, I was going to say absolutely. And one other question I have for you is this, and then I guess we got to get into like the real challenging questions under the microscope. But real quick, I mean, the toy industry, that's an area that we don't talk about that often and is really fascinating to me, right? So that I feel like has to be driven by certain trends and analysis. But at the same time, as you said, there's a development manufacturing cycle that needs to take place as well. So how do like toy companies manage this balancing act between ensuring that they're putting out toys that are like on trend, right? Whether it's mapping up to a TV show or a movie or whatever else it is, and the manufacturing process to ensure that they have the inventory that aligns with the releases. I feel like that goes the same thing with like Disney or movies or this, that, and the other. I mean, manufacturing takes a certain amount of time, right? And transport takes a certain amount of time. And these releases need to happen in very definitive timeframes. So do the movie producers talk to the inventory managers and the supply chain people to make sure that when they like release the movie, that then there's going to be this rollout of the product that's going to happen like this? I mean, I assume they can't live in silos. They have to be interconnected with regards to like the release of the movie or the show or the this and the that, so that it all like maps up with each other. What's your feelings on this, Walid?
Yeah, so one, you'd be surprised at how bad they are at this. And not just toy companies, like every company across I've rarely come across a company where they aren't in silos and they aren't speaking and they aren't dialed in. And so usually what happens is they become overly optimistic and they'll have the product, but it'll be like they'll have a bunch of excess. Kind of like the Halloween example. Like they'll fill the stores, but they'll have a bunch left at the end and they'll lose money. But there is a process which I specialize in called SNOP, which is sales and operations planning. And the general concept is a lot of companies, they start at the forecast at the finance level, usually like a board of directors or a stakeholder. And that just kind of gets shoved down across all the departments. And they just kind of make that, and they just kind of guess and they don't really figure it out. So my job is to basically speak, different languages. And so I take a financial forecast, which is aggregated at $1. I meet with the sales forecast, which is usually at the customer level. It's more middle. And then you have all the way down, and then you basically are translating financial and customer forecast into operational forecast. What does that look like from a supply chain? What does that look like from a lead time? What does that look like from a labor perspective, from a machine perspective, from a raw material perspective. And then we basically take these forecasts and reconcile them. We forecast each one independently, reconcile them, make sure they're all kind of in the same ballpark, have an alignment meeting, and then from there it's just execution with proper planning. Again, most companies are very bad at this, but that's at the highest level, the way it should work.
So the reality of it is that there's a lot of best practices and protocol, but the truth of it is that the communication breaks down. And when it breaks down, the movie comes out, maybe there isn't the product yet, the product comes out, maybe the movie's not. I mean, I assume there's a lot of these disconnects that don't allow it to be the most efficient release, right? Where it's like, okay, we're going to do this, then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. I find that fascinating, specifically for kind of the toy industry, because now whenever a movie comes out, there's the doll, there's the toy, there's this, there's that, and it goes across other industries. Like you then find the fast food restaurants then have the X-Men cup, or you then have like in the cereal box the whatever it is, toy, little plastic toy that comes there that's aligning with the movie. And they try to take advantage of these different trends and so forth that maps into, like, let's say the toy market or the entertainment market, which goes synonymous with toys and prizes and gifts. So I do find that
kind of the biggest problem. Yeah, that's the biggest problem. A lot of times they're chasing trends more than they are doing actual analysis. So what happens is they'll say, hey, we're going to launch this toy for this movie. And the product manager's like, cool, how much do we need to make? And Kareem goes out to the sourcing and he's like, we need to make 10,000 of these in order to, meet the MOQ. Cool, let's make 10,000. No one ever did the research if the market can even bear 10,000. For all you know, they can only sell 5,000. But to get it pushed through to like the finance and the board to get approval, it's like, hey, we need to make 10,000 of these MOQ. Finance will be like, well, how much is that in dollars? Oh, we don't. Okay, well, you need to make at least $1 million, or we're not going to approve this. Okay, what is that? Who cares? We're going to make $1 million. Like no one even looked at the actual market to see what it would look like. And so they kind of forced this idea through. And now it's supply first. And now they got to go spend marketing all this to kind of create the demand to try and eat it up, as opposed to the other way around.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Well, now that we got the tough questions out of the way, time for the really
tough questions. So this is our hot seat segment, Walid. So we're going to get you to answer 3 questions, as close as close to 5 minutes as possible. I think the record is like a half a second within 5 minutes, over or under. It doesn't matter if you go over or under. The goal is just to get as close as possible. So with that being said, are you ready? So I'll ask you the first question. Kareem will ask you the second question. Then I'll ask you the third question. So I'm going to start the clock now. All right. So what do most companies get wrong when it comes to business planning?
So they don't do it. And even if they think they do, they don't. So to go back to the financing, a lot of times what happens is you'll take a financial forecast or a leadership forecast and you'll just kind of force it down the pipeline, and sales will kind of do a customer forecast to match sales or to match finance. Operations will kind of create a plan to match finance, and they all just kind of take their lead from finance, which is typically the worst forecast because it's very ambitious, it's very aggregate, right? It's, very optimistic. And so they don't plan. They just kind of follow suit with one number. That's the worst case scenario. The other side is sometimes, and this is why people don't plan, is on the other side is they make it overly engineered. So they'll bring in like data scientists and engineers and financial models. And it's like some of these companies, they try and do this and they don't even have clean data to even create a financial model or a system. So it's like the extremes. It's like not doing it at all, or doing it so overly complicated that it doesn't really produce the juice worth the squeeze kind of return. And so the best place to start is just get clean data, clean reports, clear KPIs, and just kind of start there.
All right. My question is this: what's a misconception that brands have about fixing or improving their supply chain?
I think what happens is, again, they overly complicate it, and a lot of times they skip fundamentals and they think of it as just a resource thing. We're like throwing people or technology at it. Inventory is bad. Hire some people or get some technology. And they don't really understand the fundamentals of inventory. So even when they get a system, it's not really utilized because there's no one in the company that knows how to properly use the system, calculate the returns, the turnovers, things like that. So I would always say like there seems to be like a gap in fundamental knowledge across the supply chain with a lot of these roles, and they try and cover it up with either technology or more headcount, and then that just becomes even messier. So I would say like 5 people that are very like fundamentally driven to understand the core concepts of like supply chain, inventory, whatever part of it is. And then from there, when you add technology, it's a magnifier and a multiplier, not a, more complex thing that just created more noise.
Yeah. All right. So you've got almost half your time left, a little bit less than half for this last question. So what is one thing a founder can do to improve the operations immediately?
So I would say know your business. My book is called Mind Your Business for a reason. The number of times I'll go into a company and just ask basic kind of questions, and they might even say, yeah, we know the answer to that. And then you do a little digging, and it's like, you don't really know the answer. And so I would say the first thing is just know your business. And the first thing I teach all my clients is the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle. And I don't just mean that at like a SKU level. Like obviously you should know if you have, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the 80-20 principle, but it essentially says that like 80% of your results comes from 20% of the input. So if you're a restaurant and you have 100 items on your menu, you're making most of your money on 20 items. The other 80 items are just kind of on the menu just to be there. And so that it works the same way across like toy, SKU, whatever item you have, whatever company. Most of your money is coming from a handful of SKUs. And most businesses don't know that. They treat all the SKUs the same. They don't really like prioritize their SKUs. But do the same thing at every level of your business. So look at your 80-20 on your marketing spend. You're spending X amount on marketing. Where's the 80% of the results coming from? When you do the sales, where's 80% of your customers? The product level, every part of your business, kind of run that audit against it and just kind of get visibility on how your business really runs. So then you can start making better decisions and at least be in the know instead of guessing.
One last statement from you. You get close to time.
Just thanks to you guys, and then
well, we're not kicking you off the show. You've just got 30 seconds. You've got 30 seconds to expand on. Well, now you got 28, 27. Just to expand on that last question.
No, understand your business, and then again, the biggest issue I see with companies is they don't have data. They try and go from step 1 to 100, and they don't do the fundamentals first. So get clean data, recognize what your KPIs are, understand what you're measuring. Like one of the things in the book is KPIs. So just understanding like what success looks like for your business and start measuring towards it.
5 minutes and 4 seconds. Well done. I mean, that's pretty damn good.
Got him close. Got him close.
I was trying to coach a little. Yes, I was coaching a little, but I wanted him to do well. So
he did. He did great.
So you thought that was hard, didn't you, Walid? But we've actually got a little surprise that we ask our guests in every show that we don't like to tell them up front because we want them to kind of just be really, I guess, authentic in their answer. But if you could have a coffee, it's a last drop, right? You can have a coffee with anybody, live or dead. Who would it be and why?
All right, so I'm gonna do a live just in the off kit. They hear this and they're like, "Hey, let's go do coffee." So I've been kind of, as an operator, I'm very behind the scenes, and I've been attracted to like people like Kareem and stuff, like watching how they work, watching how they do the content. I was fortunate enough to already have coffee with Kareem, but there's kind of 3 people that fall in that category of like people I've been watching with the content that I want to kind of pick their brains on. And so that would be Kareem. Another fellow Lebanese, which is Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And Jay Abraham. So it would be a 50-50 coin toss between, Jay and Kevin O'Leary.
There you go. Thank God you didn't say Kareem was the top. Jeez.
Why do we have coffee?
I'd never hear the end of it, Walid, ever. It's like, hey, remember that time somebody wanted to have coffee?
I can't tell you how happy I am that you said that, so that Richard actually had to hear that. I love it. Thank you, Walid. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Kareem, the amount of times you and I have had coffee together, I've never walked away and said, you know what, that's the one guy I wanted to have coffee
As
with.
a matter of fact, when we first did this segment and we talked about that we were going to do this,
We were doing it over
you
coffee.
literally pointed it out and said, I think the last person I want to have coffee with is you.
All right, Willie. Well, look, thank you very much, man. It's been a pleasure having you on. Very insightful, especially for someone like me who definitely didn't think about that aspect of it, how tight the margins are, how tight the timing of it all is. So it was really interesting to chat with you.
Walid, why don't you tell the audience here a little bit about how people can get in touch with you and know more about what you're up to, websites, book site, whatever. Just go ahead and call it out for the audience to know how they can connect.
Yeah, the easiest way is like LinkedIn and Instagram. Walid Nasseredeen across most platforms. And then W.NDeen Advisory is the website for my business.
Very good. And for the book, you have a site for the book, or just on Amazon, or?
Yeah, Amazon, Mind Your Business. It's usually one of the first ones that pop up.
Make sure you get a copy of this book, guys. It's really, really good. It's excellent. 5 questions about your business you think you know the answer to, but don't. Very, very good book. Make sure you check it all out.
All right, Kareem, let's tell the audience how to get a hold of you, and let's talk about your book real quick.
Sure. So KareemKafouri.com for any philosophy and leadership and sort of just finding out about what I'm doing in that realm. TheAtlasNetwork.com for any global supply chain solutions, any businesses that have challenges with supply chain disruption, so on. And Supply Chain Ups and Downs for the book, or on Amazon. Those are the key places, and obviously on all the social media platforms.
Well, speaking of Amazon, my TV show is out, season 2. This is the first time we've done a show where season 2 is actually out on Amazon Prime. Leave No Trace TV. We went to Antarctica, Congo, all kinds of places. So check that up. That's on Amazon Prime, Leave No Trace TV. And check out the website, leavenotrace.tv. There you go. So that's my plug. Well, look, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching and listening. Just a reminder that each week we'll have a very special guest on to continue our conversation in the fascinating world of the global supply chain. And don't forget to follow our LinkedIn and YouTube pages at The Supply and Demand Show. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.